an example of a really bad way of coming to agreement is compromise. Another really bad resolution mechanism that happens all the time is just who's more stubborn.
So you want to get to the resolution as quickly as possible because that ultimately leads to high velocity.
I'm Bo. I talk about finance. I talk about investing. I talk about saving your money. So give me a like, a follow. So this was a pretty recent interview with Lex Friedman and Jeff Bezos. In this interview, they were discussing a very interesting topic called disagree but commit. And it was a very interesting conversation about a business practice and then how you resolve disputes. I found it very interesting, so let's go ahead and watch.
Important principle that saves a lot of arguing.
You liked, perhaps it's not two-way door decisions, is I disagree and commit phrase. So so somebody brings up an idea to you, if it's a two-way door, you state that you don't understand enough to agree.
I think what he means by two-way door is that this is a decision that you can walk back.
Commit is a really important principle that saves a lot of arguing.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to use that in my personal life. I disagree, but commit.
Like, it's very common.
I would probably use it
in any endeavor in life, in business, and anybody where you have teammates. You have a teammate, and the two of you disagree.
Yeah.
Very common.
At some point, you have to make a decision. And, in companies, we tend to organize hierarchically. So there's this, whoever's the more senior person ultimately gets to make the decision. Yeah. So ultimately, the CEO.
Basically, the boss makes the decision.
And the CEO may not always make the decision that they agree with. So, I would be the one who would disagree and commit. One of my direct reports would very much want to do something in a particular way. Yeah. I would think it was a bad idea. I would explain my point of view. They would say, Jeff, I think you're wrong, and here's why. And we would go back and forth. And I would often say, you know what? I don't think you're right, but I'm going to gamble with you. And you're closer to the ground truth than I am. I've known you for 20 years.
Yeah. I mean, usually the people that work under you, they're closer to the technical aspect of the problem, and so they know more about it.
And I'm agreeing to commit to that decision. So I'm not going to be second guessing it. I'm not going to be sniping at it. I'm not going to be saying I told you so. I'm going to try actively to help make sure it works.
Yeah, that's really an important part of doing it, so that you're actually enabling people instead of just putting them down.
On teams. And there are so many ways when two people disagree about something, I'm assuming like the case where everybody is well-intentioned, they just have a very different opinion about what the right decision is. And we have in our society and inside companies, we have a bunch of mechanisms that we use to resolve these kinds of disputes. A lot of them are, I think, really bad. So an example of a really bad way of coming to agreement is compromise.
Yeah.
So compromise.
Not everything is a democracy.
We're in a room here, and I could say, Lex, how tall do you think this ceiling is? And you'd be like, I don't know, Jeff, maybe 12 feet tall. And I would say, I think it's 11 feet tall. Yeah. And then we'd say, you know what? Let's just call it 11 and a half feet. That's compromise. Yeah. Instead of the right thing to do is, to get a tape measure or figure out some way of actually measuring. But getting that tape measure and figure out how to get it to the top of the ceiling and all these things, that requires energy. Compromise, the advantage of compromise as a resolution mechanism is that it's low energy. But it doesn't lead to truth. And so
there's a lot of work that's involved in actually finding the facts about a scenario. And
another really bad resolution mechanism that happens all the time is just who's more stubborn.
Yeah.
This is also
like compromise would be like averaging the knowledge of the two parties and coming out to something that, doesn't really reflect the actual details of the problem.
And this is very demoralizing. So, this is where escalation, I try to ask people who, on my team, is say, never get to a point where you are resolving something by, who gets exhausted first. Escalate that. I'll help you make the decision. Like, because that's so de-energizing and such a terrible, lousy way to make a decision.
So you want to get to the resolution as quickly as possible because that ultimately leads to a high velocity of decision.
Yes, and you want to try to get as close to truth as possible.
Yeah.
So you want, exhausting the other person is not truth seeking.
Two benefits here of getting to the point of making a decision is it allows you to continue to move forward and keep momentum going, and at the same time, making a decision, especially without compromise, allows us to really understand and research the issue and come to a very good decision.
Moving forward quickly on decisions, as quickly as you responsibly can, is how you increase velocity. Most of what slows things down is taking too long to make decisions at all skill levels.
Everything you do with your life is, as long as it's a decision that you can modify, you can change, and most decisions are like that. A lot of times we get really scared to make a decision because we think that it's almost permanent, like we can't walk it back at all, or that there's this sort of fear of loss and making a mistake, when the right thing to do is to make a decision, be wrong, and then correct it. Especially for decisions that happen on a daily basis. A lot of the time, invest in a stock. What happens is you may end up being wrong, but if you are able to admit it, right, and you're going to lose a little bit of money or time, and but now you've learned something. Versus if you had just sat there and not made a decision at all, and you see the price get away from you, and now it's up high, and you didn't buy because you were scared to make a decision. Now you didn't really learn anything. Like it seems like, oh, I had the right answer, I just didn't commit to it. But in reality, you didn't learn, especially if it went wrong, right? If you were wrong, you missed out on a valuable lesson there. So I think that, this interview and this particular part of this interview really struck out to me because, it really shows that the importance of decision making and making a decision for several reasons. One reason is it keeps the momentum going in your daily life and business. Even if you're running a business or if you're doing some sort of project, if you make a decision and then you're wrong, you'll learn something. Versus if you don't make a decision, you'll never commit to anything, and you'll sort of just be stuck. And another decision will come along, and then you will also not be able to make a decision. And the second part of what Bezos was talking about was disagree and commit. Disagree and commit is this idea that focuses and specializes in making that decision, where that decision leads to more information and more truth, as he says it. So, if there's two people that disagree about, the height of a ceiling, right? And if they're both eyeballing it and they just come up with an average of the two to compromise, and then they call that the end of the decision, well, what happened is that the ceiling is very clear. It's either one measurement or the other, and so they would probably get that wrong if they were trying to build a shelf or something like that. And so basically, if one person disagrees but says, okay, you know what, I'm going to go along with you, right? He says gamble, but I think what that kind of means is more like you have maybe not faith in that person's the answer to the problem, but you have a faith in their ability to get to the right answer, then yeah, you can disagree, but still commit and enable them so that you are able to make a decision and move forward. I think that's really important. I think this is just such a very key interview and a very key moment in this interview that I think we can all take some enlightenment from. What do you guys think about this idea of disagree and commit? Does this sound like something you would want to do in your life? So if you like that video, please leave a comment, like, and subscribe.
Thank you for watching. Check out our other videos here. Subscribe!